Welcome to the weekly Threat Insights group call. Apologies for the Zoom confusion. I'll make sure it gets fixed for future invites. We've got our agenda is not very big today, so this could be quick. We don't have any follow-ups from previous discussions unless anyone has anything ad hoc that they want to ask about right now. Okay, nothing to demo. I know there's going to be something soon. I just saw some great related issues work that Savasha has been working on, but I don't think it's quite in a demo state yet, but I think it's going to make Matt and Andy quite happy. But we do have some items for planning breakdown. Matt, I'll let you go first.
Cool. Sorry, one. Yeah, so this is kind of a continuation of all of the restructuring of some of the dashboards to get them more into a spot where, well, there's an actual dashboard, and which is separate from the vulnerability list. The one piece that really is going to be a little bit different is the project level, since we don't have any visualizations today for it. So there's not anything to split onto a separate dashboard. So if you look at the designs on this one, this is, let's see, the very last, second to last image on there. If here, I'll just go ahead and share my screen so we can all do the same thing. So we haven't really done much in terms of changing the visualizations. I think this is a pretty cool opportunity to start using some of the new charting components that we have available to us in our design library. They're all, Andy, help me remember, it's the Apache project that includes a lot of these pre-built components.
The eCharts components?
Yeah, is
or
that what
the
it is?
GitLab. Yeah.
Yeah, the Apache project.
We use eCharts for all of our charting. So we basically get all of this stuff for free and free, right? You never know what you're going to encounter. But we should be able to kind of pull this in with relative ease. It already exists in Storybook.
So yeah, so the idea is basically this is taking the existing visualization that we've got on the group and the instance level dashboards, the quote sparklines charts, which is a good start, but it's not interactive and it doesn't give you details. So this chart, so you can't see it from the picture, but the component is pretty cool. So like if you actually click on these data series down at the bottom, the severities, it will toggle them on and off and it'll dynamically change the y-axis. So for instance, if you've got a bunch of unknowns or infos and you turn those off, you'll see just the things that are important. In fact, that's actually one of the requests for this is to keep those off by default so that they're not overwhelming the chart. You can also adjust the time series, so it's not just fixed to, I think it's 90 days now. So you can actually, we're gonna let it expand back to, I'll say a year. That's the optimistic ask. Obviously, there could be a performance consideration with that. But yeah, I think this is going to be a great first step towards giving a lot more insight in terms of time trends and metrics. And then after we we'll see the feasibility or how hard it is to get it at the project level, I'd love to see this replace the sparklines charts on the group and the instance dashboard as well. So yeah, that's pretty much what this one is all about. Again, splitting out the vulnerability report down here into a separate menu item from the security dashboard, and then we'll just have this one big chart for now. And we can add stuff in the future.
All right, so just a reminder, we're not refining. So besides this, Matt, is there anything else you want to highlight as part of this issue?
I think that's probably it.
So it's just splitting into 2 pages, adding that left-hand or having the left-hand navigation reflect that, and then having the home page or the dashboard page just have this sparkline chart for the project level.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other improvements to the UX. I think these have been sort of updated, like the menus. Savash, I know you and Alexander, who's on PTO right now, we're kind of talking about some of the new behaviors for these. I think other than some of the improvements or we'll call them refinements, the chart is the main thing, splitting it out and actually having a chart.
But with the improvements to the vulnerability list, we've already captured that in the, I think it was the group level work breakdown that we've already created
Probably
implementation
true.
issues for. So Savash, as the representative of the front end team, if you can confirm, given that these different reports, the vulnerability reports, are shared across the different levels, if we implement the chart improvements for the group level, will we get that for the project level, or is there additional work that will need to be done?
So usually we create, for instance, the chart that we have right now, the history, vulnerability history, that's a component which is a bit customizable for the instance level and then for the group level. So usually we create a component per itself. So if that's the question, we will probably create a new component and then we will reuse it in all 3 dashboards.
Sort of. I was talking specifically about on the vulnerability list. There's some changes to the filtering, and that we've got, for example, there was one around the margins and making sure that the margins are all consistent. You know, are those things that we'll need to implement separately across each dashboard?
No, the vulnerability list is shared. Once we change something, it's all visible for all 3 dashboards, unless we specifically tell not to do so.
Okay. And I know when we broke down the previous dashboard work for 13.3 and 13.4, I believe it was the group level dashboard that we created subtasks for the report improvements that Andy's requested. So we may need an issue for the project level that says, you know, test it, make sure it all looks right still. But hopefully it'll be inherited.
Yep.
Okay, so to remind us for our planning breakdown questions, we're not refining right now, we're doing planning breakdown. So our questions are the requirements clear enough to understand the intent of the request? Any nays? Do we know the dependencies of the work to be accomplished?
We need the chart, but the chart is already there, I guess. So that's the only thing that I can think of.
Is there back-end dependencies? Will we need new APIs just to make sure I understand if this is a front-end and back-end effort?
No, I believe we're going to reuse what we have in GraphQL and what was already added for the same chart. So we're actually changing how we're going to render charts, but the data will come from the same place.
Perfect.
Maybe
Thank you,
Alan,
Alan.
do we have the ability to go back dynamically in time beyond the 90 days though, up to a year?
Right now we have only for 90 days. We can extend it to just one switch, or we can extend it to 1 year easily. So yeah, that would be one. That's true.
Is it like a default 90 days, or can we like we can specify the number of days in the call, or no?
We simply remove the history data for project, so vulnerability statistics that are older than 90 days right now. So we just have a background worker that is doing that. We just need to change that to stop doing that.
Okay, again, we're not getting into refinement too much. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, call me out on this if this is the wrong area, but I believe this is the drag area. So, I mean, the idea is that you can actually change the x-axis dynamically. So it's not going to necessarily be a fixed 30, 60, 90 a year. I just want to make sure that that's clear from whatever API changes we might need to make.
Yeah, that's currently possible, because previously we were limiting that to only 10 days, but that was recently changed. So now there's no limits. You can query for how much you want, but we store only for last 90 days. So that's why you cannot like have a request. You will not get the data for longer than 90 days, but you can certainly do a request and request that data.
It's just going to be flat zeros.
Yeah.
Are there any other dependencies? Do you believe there's anything outside of the Threat Insights group? Data, database? No? Okay.
Just one question. The chart seems to be, in this design, it seems to be only for 7 days. How is the user, Andy, do you know, how is the user able to switch that for like 60 days, for instance? Is there a button there, or that needs to be implemented in the chart?
That's the actual, you would drag where Matt's mouse is, you would drag that out or in to change the actual time frame of what you're seeing in the chart. Link in the comments of this issue, so you'll see zoom and scroll and line chart with toolbox zoom and scrolls, the one with that dragging component.
Okay, so we don't need to implement that.
Do you know if it's used elsewhere in Get? Oh, great.
Yeah.
If,
And some of the operations navigation, click around through there, you'll see the.
but this gives that interactive example though.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But this
like
has
If nobody's
a
played with
start
this, you can.
date. Sorry, this has a start date and an end date, so you cannot go back. Like our start date is going to be 90 days, for instance. The user can go back until 90 days and then cannot go back to 1 year, I guess, right? Or can.
So I guess if that's currently what's happening, so the request is, can we extend that back to a full year? And if we don't have the data, then we'll just need to start collecting the data now. I guess so that we're storing more than 90 days of that history.
Okay.
Alan, were you talking about vulnerabilities being stored for 90 days or the findings themselves?
No, either that you have the new model that was introduced 2 weeks ago, I believe. It's called vulnerability historical statistics, and we store for every single day. We store information. Whenever something is changed in the vulnerability list, we store information how many we had on that time. So that's it. And I believe we group them by severity. So we have that information. The question is, okay, filters will not be applied here, right? Because it will be in a separate page. It will be like on the dashboard. You'll not be able to apply a filter because that would probably kill us in terms of like database queries and so on. For example, I just want to see only, I don't know, what kind of filters do we have? Oh, for example,
Resolved.
Or only resolved or something like that. Like for now, we only store information about severities and counts assigned to it, but we don't have an information that what kind of state the vulnerability was or any other information.
For the purposes of this chart, I think that should be fine, because it's just the severities over time. So not like, this isn't the like resolution time tracking or anything.
Cool, okay.
Yeah, we actually used to have a chart like this way back on the security dashboard prior to going to Sparklines.
It's retro. Everything that's old is new again.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so continuing, so it sounds like research solution validation. I know Andy and Matt have done a lot of work on this. I'm actually not sure if we need that as a question in our planning breakdown, if you guys are bringing it to us at this point.
Yeah, we could probably remove that question because we'll be calling those out specifically when we'll be needing to do that.
Yeah, and I know sometimes we do get a sneak peek at things and we get to see them early. I think that's nice and we like that, but I don't think that's at the point where we're ready to say, okay, we've passed planning breakdown. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put a potentially remove question. And the last one, is it small enough to complete in one iteration? That's a big question.
I think yes. We haven't done the planning breakdown yet, but it feels like it should be.
But this is the planning breakdown, Savash.
Oh, wow, yeah.
No, what you're saying though is we haven't created the implementation issues yet, so it's hard to tell. But if we were to put this in a vacuum and not look at a bunch of other work alongside of it, you're confident that we'd be able to get all of this done in one iteration?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like, unless if anyone has big objections and speaks up right now, this issue has passed planning breakdown and is ready for planning. Matt, is your hope to get this ready for 13.4? Depending on what else rolls over from 13.3.
Yeah, I mean, if we have space for it, I think this would be a great thing to try to pull in, so then we have that consistency with now actually having a separate dashboard from the vulnerability list at all 3 levels. A suggestion is a good place if this looks like this is going to be a little bit big is do the separation in the new chart and keep it with the 90 days that we've got now. And we can extend the time series back to a full year as a future improvement on this.
Put that as a note here. Will you add that as a comment to the issue? It might be good to capture that as an idea. I don't know, putting it in the agenda on here is the right place. Okay, and you can also stop sharing if you want.
Nobody wants to watch me edit the issue.
Everyone likes someone to watch them type, right?
That's right.
Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to the next item, unless anyone has any, like watching Matt try and figure this out though.
There it is.
Unless anyone has any other questions or comments about that project level dashboard redesign? I just switched the order of the 2 items in the agenda. And Matt, that's partially because I know we've talked a lot. Well, okay, I could be wrong. I might have. Matt, of the next 2 issues, do you feel like we're going to get to this failed job item soon? Do you think this is something we need to talk about and start breaking down right now?
That one's probably lower priority. I think that one is a nice to have since there was that information previously, but I wouldn't say that it's critical to see right now.
Okay.
I mean, it's more just to give people an idea. If you haven't run a security scan against the default branch for a while, you may have stale information in there. If everything is running as planned, it's kind of a non-thing. So yeah.
So more specifically, between the metrics capture and that, I think we have time to talk about one of them in this meeting. Do you have a preference on which one we get into?
Let's definitely talk about the metrics capture, because that one I don't want people to think that this is something that we're necessarily going to have to do. My intent is to figure out, like, what does the sizing look like? If we decide that it's going to be too big, or if it's above a certain size, I'd rather not have us do the implementation for the metrics right now and wait for, excuse me, the telemetry and the data team to actually roll out their proposed solution, hopefully later this year.
Okay, so
in my research of this, for this and for the container security side, I think we will need, I don't know if we need to wait, but we're highly dependent on the telemetry team. So I think, Matt, to be able to move forward on this, we'd need you to talk with the telemetry, your peer on the telemetry team, to make sure they would be able to do their part to make this happen.
Well,
we can only get it so far, is my understanding, and that's the recommendation from the telemetry team on things like this. Is it's kind of they have to do it. We give them direction, but then they have to do most of the work.
Yeah, so I've spoken to them several times. Unfortunately, my peer from the telemetry team is no longer with GitLab, so it's now the engineering manager is the acting product manager for that. We'll say the synopsis of it is we want to move to a place where we can actually tie behaviors to an individual user. Right now, it's at the session level. We also have no data coming back from the self-hosted customers, which is the vast majority of ultimate users. And the telemetry team has an initiative to roll out a snowplow database for self-hosted customers that will also include user level actions instead of session level actions. Today, snowplow was all session level. That's 3 to 6 months out for them. What I'm trying to determine is if we decide to implement the usage ping, which is the current way of getting self-hosted data, and its user level, if that takes us 2 iterations to do that, and then also port that over to GitLab.com, to me, that's not worth it. It's not worth 2 iterations worth of effort for something that's going to be here in 3 to 6 anyway, which will actually be the proper solution delivered by the telemetry team.
And my understanding is that even using the existing ping functionality for things like this, there'd still be work to be done by the telemetry team.
I think so, yes. Yeah. So we would have to define all of the captures, and then they need to make sure that they're pulling that data properly into the ping. So yeah, it's. I want to see if it's too much work to be worth the effort now to just get redone more properly later.
I haven't looked into all the details, but in the various discussions I've been a part of, I think that my gut feel says yes, we should wait.
That's mine too. I'd like, this is why I want something to push back on the product management leadership. Basically, there's a big push towards these metrics and having visibility, but I think it's not an appropriate use of time if we're spending all of it not moving the actual product forward and trying to do a Band-Aid metrics capture. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to get at. But if everybody goes, hey, yeah, it'll take like a week.
It's definitely not.
So you'd like us to refine this as a data point for your conversation with the telemetry team to urge them to let us wait to use the snowplow for self-hosted.
I want to make a well-informed decision so that when I say it doesn't make sense to expend the amount of effort on this right now, that I'm not just making it up.
Okay, so that being said, I do think it would warrant some discussion. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at the issue yet. I know Alan and myself and Tiago have. Do we want to bring this back to the table next week when folks have had more of a chance to dig in, or do people want to look at it really quickly now and start to ask questions? I think it's a little in depth in understanding what the usage ping implementation takes and maybe looking into some of the, I mean, we don't want to venture into refinement. Go ahead, Wayne.
Oh, so when Tiago and I discussed this, because we were discussing it relating to some other things, there's like a 12-step process.
Yeah.
Some of which we can update. Some of which, of course, you know, it's everybody can contribute, but the telemetry team does not recommend other teams add additional telemetry items at this point until they do that revamp. Sounds very similar to what Matt described. So it takes actually a lot just to understand the entire process. It goes through many, many different steps.
We're not going to get an estimate out of this planning breakdown conversation. So what Wayne is describing would take one person a good amount of time. Do we want to ask one person to do that?
When we know the answer is going to be, the net answer is going to be, Matt, is that it's significant effort until the telemetry revamp is done.
Yeah, if there's a way to do a lighter touch breakdown and estimation, it doesn't need to be a full implementation plan, but just something that can get to a rough, how many milestones do we think it would take kind of a thing. And if the answer is 2 or more, then I'm comfortable pushing back on that.
Has anyone in this group had any exposure to the usage ping? I thought I saw some discussions around this earlier in the week. I'm kind of looking at Alan. I've seen him shake his head too. Alan, given your knowledge of how the usage ping works already, can you put an estimate on how long it would take you to give us an estimate? I mean, do you think it would be several days to do that investigation, or do you think it'd be several hours?
It's definitely different from what we had in container security,
Okay.
because that was all around backend. Now we're talking about things on the front end. So to be honest, I have no idea.
We'd be starting from scratch, basically.
Yeah.
That's a great point too, Alan. It's usage ping can only grab relational database events, and it's aggregated and sent back. Everything that we capture is a front-end data point, and so there's an additional concern or question over, can we store front-end events in the relational database to gather up for this usage ping? That was a question I had posed to Tiago, and I feel like we need to reach out to the maintainers first of all. Are they going to let us capture a button click in Postgres? They may say no.
So, I talked to my peer, Bartek, who has a number of teams, including the telemetry team. His recommendation was don't do it until we do the revamp, due to the work it would take by us to do it and the work it would take by his team to do it with the other priorities that they have. So that was his recommendation. Because I'm really interested in this data too. So I started figuring out, you know, is there an easier or more direct way of doing it? And the recommendation from Bartek was no. So I don't know if you can go with that, Matt. Is that, you know?
No, that's actually very helpful. I think the telemetry team, in my discussions with them, they're just sort of trying to lay out facts. They're not trying to, we'll say, push an opinion one way or the other, but the sense that I get is I don't think that they think that it's necessarily a worthwhile expenditure of time either. Best case scenario I see it is we spend all this time, we burn a couple of iterations, and then 2 or 3 iterations later, we have to completely redo it anyway. So what do we get out of that? Not a whole lot. And the data points are going to change as soon as we migrate over to the snowplow user level stuff. So.
Yep.
I think that's probably good enough. I'm hearing that it's not even a small effort to get to a decent effort estimate, which is probably going to be too big anyway.
Okay, great. So we're
The
done.
item C has been on the agenda 4th time, so now it's going to be a 5th time. Should
It'll
we
be a
put it?
5th time.
Should we just drop it? I mean, is it?
No.
No. Should we put it as first next time?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's getting deprioritized for a reason because it is a lower priority than the other items that Matt's been bringing to planning breakdown. So we'll keep moving it. It is ready to look at, and it's got a lot of value to add for our customer.
Parting comment, I know we're over on time before we break, is I look at the metrics and number of unique users of the vulnerability management pages. I look at it too often. If I look at it daily, and that's too often. It's just cool. Since this is a public recording, I don't know if that's transparent about the actual numbers, and of course it's only for GitLab.com users. There's a lot of people who use it, so that's really cool. Quite a few. So we have a lot of opportunity to give them the vulnerability data they need so they can triage and figure out the right things to do to improve their security. So it's good stuff. With great power comes great responsibility.
Perfect parting note.
There you
Bye,
go.
everybody. Thank you.